Right now, you are not bored. You have a screen in front of you, sound in your ears, information pouring in from every direction. But take all of that away. Sit in a silent room. Do nothing. Within minutes, something uncomfortable begins. A restlessness, an itch with no location. A pull toward anything at all. That feeling has a name, and it may be the single most underestimated force in all of human history. Boredom does not feel like a superpower. It feels like a problem to solve. And that, it turns out, is exactly the point. For most of recorded history, philosophers treated boredom as a moral failure. The ancient Greeks called it acedia. Early Christian monks described it as a spiritual affliction, a demon of noonday that made the mind restless and the soul hollow. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote in the 1600s that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He meant it as a criticism, but he may have accidentally described the engine of civilization. Here is what boredom actually is at the neurological level. When external stimulation drops below a certain threshold, your brain does not go quiet. It activates. The default mode network, a set of brain regions that become more active when you are not focused on anything external, switches on. This network is associated with imagination, future planning, social cognition, and creative thought. It is, in other words, the part of your brain that invents things, and it only fully activates when you stop feeding yourself input. A psychologist studying boredom and creativity at a university in the United Kingdom ran one of the most revealing experiments in this field. Participants who spent time doing a repetitive, boring task before a creativity test significantly outperformed those who went straight to the test. The bored group generated more creative ideas, more unusual ideas, and more ideas overall. Boredom didn't block thinking, it ignited it. But why would evolution give you a state that feels this bad? Think about your ancestors before cities, before agriculture, before the concept of entertainment existed at all. They had long stretches of nothing. The hunt was over, the fire was burning, the children were sleeping. There was no task, no predator, no crisis, just time. And that time, if wasted, was time that a competitor could use to solve a problem, invent a tool, or build a social alliance. Boredom, from an evolutionary perspective, is your brain's alarm signal. It is the feeling that you should be doing something more useful with your cognitive resources. It is discomfort engineered to push you toward novelty, toward problem solving, toward creation. Researchers studying ancient Mesopotamia, the civilization that gave the world the first written language, found something striking buried in the earliest Sumerian texts. The scribes who invented writing did not start with practical record keeping. The earliest surviving written marks include riddles, jokes, and what appear to be early attempts at storytelling. People sitting in one place with time on their hands invented writing not purely out of necessity. They invented it, in part, because they had nothing else to do. The same pattern appears across civilizations. Cave paintings estimated at 17,000 years old were not created by people in the middle of a survival crisis. They were created by people who had shelter, fire, and time. Empty time, time that needed filling. Look at the history of mathematics. Ancient thinkers made some of their greatest geometric discoveries not because they needed them immediately, but because they were playing, exploring shapes and relationships for the pleasure of it. Much of early astronomy was the same. People watching the sky not because they needed to, but because the night was long and the mind needed something to land on. Now, here is the counterintuitive twist. Modern life has declared war on boredom, and you are losing something because of it. Every waiting room now has a screen. Every commute has a podcast. Every spare moment has a scroll. The average person checks their phone over 150 times a day. Cognitive scientists describe this as continuous partial attention, a state in which you are never fully focused and never fully resting. The default mode network, the one that fires during boredom and produces creative insight, never fully activates. You are, in neurological terms, never truly bored anymore. A neuroscientist at a major American university who first mapped the default mode network found that this network does some of its most important work during apparent mental rest, memory consolidation, emotional processing, the construction of long-term plans and goals. All of it happens in the quiet, All of it requires the kind of idle mental state that modern technology has nearly eliminated. This is why the greatest thinkers in history were so deliberate about doing nothing. One naturalist took a daily walk he called his thinking path. A gravel loop he paced without purpose. An inventor reportedly sat for hours in a kind of waking stillness before breakthroughs arrived. A renowned mathematician described his most important insights arriving not while he worked, but in the moment his mind went quiet after days of conscious effort. The insight doesn't arrive during the work. It arrives in the gap between the work and the next distraction, and this applies to civilizations as much as to individuals. The most creative and inventive periods in human history have not been the most frantic ones. They have been periods of relative stability, when enough basic needs were met that people had time to be bored. The Islamic Golden Age, the Italian Renaissance, the Scottish Enlightenment. Prosperity didn't just give people resources, it gave them unstructured time, and unstructured time, it turns out, is where ideas come from. Boredom is a gift your ancestors could not always afford. You live in a world that works around the clock to make sure you never feel it. Every app on your phone, every notification, every autoplay video exists partly to fill the gap that your brain would otherwise use to wander, to wonder, and to build. The people designing those systems understand this, even if they don't say it out loud. Boredom is the enemy of engagement. And engagement is the currency of the attention economy. But boredom is also the enemy of stagnation. Every piece of art you have ever loved, every technology you rely on, every idea that changed how humans understood themselves, began in a mind that had run out of other things to do. A mind that was restless, a mind that was searching, a mind that was bored. Right now, you are not bored. But the next time you feel that restlessness creeping in, that uncomfortable itch with no location, you might want to resist the urge to reach for your phone, because that feeling is not a malfunction. It is an invitation. The same one your ancestors felt when they picked up a piece of charcoal and pressed it against a cave wall for no particular reason, except that the night was long and the mind needed somewhere to go.